Well, to throw more light on some of the issues raised in that UNDP report, I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by the UNDP's national economist here in Nigeria, Dr. Victor Oboh. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10. Now, the report raises many questions, showing particularly a disconnect between the rising economic growth across Africa, and then you can see figures of malnutrition and hunger growing by the day. What would you say is responsible for that disconnect that your organization has found out?
Thank you very much. There is an apparent disconnect, as you have mentioned, between the recent progress in economic growth in the sub-Saharan Africa and poverty reduction. There are key issues that are responsible for this paradox. First and foremost is the problem of misguided policies. Policies are not targeted at, reducing poverty. We have growth rates that are recorded, but there is no linkage between growth and development. And for that reason, the Human Development Index for Sub-Saharan Africa has been very, very low. The other issue has to do with weak institutions. Institutions that are put in place are unable to deliver services that can affect the poor positively. We also have problem with malfunctional markets, lack of market infrastructure that will be able to deliver, poor growth for the majority of the poor that are living in rural areas. So a myriad of such factors are responsible for the disconnect we have recorded.
One of the other key concerns for me that stood out was the amount of money also being invested in certain countries across West Africa in terms of what's being invested in agriculture. I mean, our own agriculture minister had said that less than 3% of the budget is spent on agriculture. What would you make of the kind of investment that you see?
Now that is a key issue. The lack of political will is glaring in sub-Saharan Africa. You've made a very important point that the budgetary allocation to agriculture remains very, very low. I give you an instance. As the Honorable Minister of Agriculture pointed out today during the presentation, taking Nigeria as a case study, the total allocation, to agriculture in Nigeria stand below 3%. Which is a far cry from even the 10% that has been recommended in CADEP in Maputo, the Maputo Declaration. And so this has reduced funds that to be made available for research and development and for provision of infrastructure and inputs, as well as mechanization.
Well, countries
so
like
that has made agriculture to remain at the primitive level in sub-Saharan Africa.
Well, I know the report is basically about West Africa and all, but zoning in to us here in Nigeria, the report mentioned countries like Malawi, Ethiopia and Rwanda being a bit more successful with this food security index. What is it they're doing that Nigeria isn't doing right at the moment?
Well, we have a long history of misguided policies in Nigerian agriculture. But the good news is that Nigeria has now packaged an agenda which the Honorable Minister is championing, which we call the Agricultural Transformation Agenda. It is now addressing comprehensively and holistically all the disconnect, along the agricultural value chain. So the main problem that has been responsible for the slow growth of agriculture in Nigeria as a country has to do with the kind of policies that are not consistent, misguided policies that has not addressed agriculture holistically. But the value chain approach which the present administration has embarked upon has the potential to transform agriculture in a holistic manner because it is addressing all the bottlenecks right from the production level to the processing level and to the marketing level, as well as putting the food on the table. By the time all the bottlenecks are removed, the entire value chain will be revamped, and agriculture will now begin to grow and address the issue of poverty and provide jobs for the unemployed.
All right, at that point we're going to have to leave it. I'm going to thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10. And I've been speaking with the UNDP's national economist in Nigeria, that's Dr. Victor Oboh, and we've been looking at some of the issues that were raised in the UNDP report.